The classroom fell silent when Ethan wheeled himself to the front. No one had expected him to speak up, especially not today. Most days, he just sat in the back of the room, his wheelchair tucked quietly beneath the desk. The kids didn't really talk to him. He didn't mind much, he was used to it. He had learned to find comfort in being alone. But today was different. Today, Ethan had something to prove. Ethan, Mrs. Miller said, her voice a little uncertain. Do you have the answer to the problem? Ethan's fingers tapped the armrests of his wheelchair, his mind already racing ahead. He had solved the math problem in less than 5 minutes, faster than anyone else in the class. It was a problem no one had been able to crack all week. And yet, Ethan had found a way. He rolled forward, reached for the whiteboard marker, and without hesitation, began to write out his solution. His handwriting was neat and clear, his equations flowing smoothly. The class stared at him, wide-eyed, as his pen moved across the board like it had a mind of its own. When he finished, he turned back to face the class. The entire room was quiet. Mrs. Miller looked at the board, then back at Ethan, clearly impressed. This is perfect, she said. No one else in the class has figured this out. How did you do it? Ethan didn't smile. He never really smiled much, not because he was unhappy, but because he didn't need to. His mind was the only thing that mattered to him. He had always been good at understanding things quickly, solving problems that made other kids frustrated. But that didn't make him popular. In fact, most of the time, he felt like an outsider. The other kids didn't get it. They saw the wheelchair first, then the quiet boy who didn't speak much. They didn't see how brilliant he was, how his brain worked like a super-fast computer, solving puzzles and equations in his head before anyone even finished reading the problem. Well, thank you, Ethan, Mrs. Miller said, clearly trying to hide her surprise. Class, I think we have a lot to learn from Ethan today. But instead of applause, there was only awkward silence. Some of the kids shifted in their seats, unsure of what to say. A few glanced at each other and whispered. It was the same thing every time Ethan would do something amazing. And yet, the other kids would just ignore him. No one really knew how to talk to him. As the bell rang and the class ended, Ethan wheeled himself to the door, already used to being alone. He didn't mind the silence. It was easier than the awkwardness that came when people tried to be nice out of pity. No one ever really understood him. He was just the boy in the wheelchair, the one who didn't belong in the big games at recess, or in the lunchroom with the laughter and jokes.